Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thanks for all being here. Why do we always have the blind? We always have the blinds shut. Oh, right, I see. Because of the crowds outside, I realise that's why. Okay. As you all know, item number 1, welcome and apologies. I don't think we do have any apologies. No. In which case, all I will say by way of welcome is, and opening remarks, is just to talk a little bit about Network North, which is the announcement that has been made since we last met. Clearly, the cancellation of HS2 to Manchester was a surprise, not something I particularly wanted to see, but now that decision has been made and the subsequent announcement about Network North, I think that is an opportunity for us now to engage in a conversation in good faith with the government about what we might be able to get as South Yorkshire as a result of that announcement. I do have some concerns about Network North, not least the fact that it's not a network and it's not all in the north. But apart from that, I think the £2.8 billion for potholes in the southeast, the east of England, and the southwest was a particularly noteworthy example. But I do think it's worth saying we should absolutely try and engage with the government and get what we can from the next phase of the deployment of that money, and we will do. And I was grateful to Hugh Merriman coming to South Yorkshire and having a conversation with us about that. And I think there are some big projects across the whole of South Yorkshire that we can now put on the table and try and have a conversation with the government about, which we will do. Unless anybody has anything they would like to say about that, I will move on to announcements. I don't think there are any announcements I'm aware of. No, in which case, item number 3 is urgent items. I don't believe there are any urgent items, in which case we move on to items to be considered in the absence of public and press. None. Voting rights for non-constituent members. None. Declarations of interest by individual members in relation to any item of business on the agenda other than the standard items. None. Reports from and questions by members. Item number 7. No surprises? No, none. Receipt of petitions? None. Public questions? None. And therefore, minutes of the meeting held on the 12th of September. Does anybody have any comments or revisions around the minutes? In which case we can agree the minutes. Thank you very much. In which case we move on to the substantive item number 11, Business Advisory Board appointments. Please, item number 11 from Andy. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. This paper asks MCA Board to formally endorse appointments to the Business Advisory Board. At the last meeting of the MCA, you approved the appointment of 6 representatives from the business groups across South Yorkshire. The members you're asked to support the appointment of today complement those and are from the business community and recruited via an open, transparent process. They are Sherry Qatari, Tariq Shah, Ros Davies, David Cross, Richard Gould and Ken Perrott. Board members should note that the first proposed meeting of the Business Advisory Board is a week today, and that is in the diary. And these members, should they be appointed, will join that meeting.
Thank you. Any comments or questions from anyone about the Business Advisory Board? I will say I'm really pleased with it. I think it is a brilliant group. I'm really pleased with the diversity. I'm really pleased with the types of people that are on there. I'm really pleased with the spread across South Yorkshire and the leading people we've been able to convince to join our Business Advisory Board. Not that they needed much convincing, but I'm pleased that they have. And I think it's a really positive development and a strong signal of intent in terms of what we're intending to do in terms of working with our business community to make South Yorkshire a better place. So very excited about that, very pleased, grateful to all the hard work that's gone in there, because I know that's been a significant piece of work to kind of scope out the lay of the land and then agree that. So thank you to everybody that's engaged in that piece of work. Thank you. Any other comments before I move on? No? Brilliant. Thank you. In which case, can we move on to item number 12, please, which is the transfer of Police and Crime Commissioner powers, which is from Steve Davenport. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Members will recall in July this board agreed to proceed to secure the transfer of functions of the Police and Crime Commissioner to the Mayor. this will also bring forward a mayoral election in next May. We've now made further progress. We've had the letter of consent from the government approving the process. We've also now received the a draft of the formal order to comment on, and that order will do as we expect, which is curtail the existing mayoral term by approximately 2 years, call for election in May 24 for mayor with PCC functions, and transfer those functions with effect from the 8th of May. So the order is as expected. We're in liaison with the PCC's office. They're also collating any further comments to the order. So this report is really to get the MCA's formal approval for us to write to government, given the consent to the order. The mayor will also need to consent due to the effect on his term. And each of your districts, we're in liaison with your districts around getting your own consents, which again will be sent in before the order is laid. We've been given a date of the 7th of December for the order to be laid. So, subject to that, any questions?
Thank you. Any questions or comments for Steve or more broadly? I would simply say I think this is a positive development. I'm really pleased to see this moving forward. There was a point at which I didn't think it would be, and I'm really pleased it is. Clearly, nothing is done until it's all done, and so I'd be grateful for any support you might be able to offer in your individual local authorities to move that forward, because I think it's important that we get that unanimous support across South Yorkshire for this move. It is a big move, it is an important move, and I'd like to be able to do that with the full acknowledgement and support of council colleagues, because I think that's a really important part of this process. So thank you for all the help you've offered so far, and I'm keen to see that move forward. Anything else from anybody else unless we no? Okay, bro, thank you very much. In which case, move on to item number 13. We're on to policy items. Item number 13 is the economic updates, verbal presentation, and that's from Paul.
Thanks, Oliver. Afternoon, everyone. Yeah, so I thought it'd just be we'll do an economic update and business confidence, and hopefully the slides will come up. Yep, great. And yeah, I think part of this I kind of want to prove Gareth wrong, because Gareth's been giving me lots of digs that very sarcastically that I was going to come here and cheer everyone up for 10 minutes. I'm going to hopefully prove Gareth wrong and look for some positives in some of the data. But in terms of economic growth, in terms of the most recent quarter, you'll see this on Q3 there, it's flat at a national level, the economic update, in terms of GDP. In terms of business confidence expectations, it's been falling in recent months, but looking at the positives, if you look at the chart on the right hand side against other countries, actually the UK were doing better than the Eurozone and other major European economies. So it's, business, there's uncertainty in business, but actually if you look at other countries, we're not doing too bad compared to some of them. But on investment, on the most recent, the far side there, we've seen a reduction of about 4% of a business investment. It's a bit of a concern. That has preceded a few months before that of growth, of more investment. But if you look historically, ignoring the pandemic, there's the most recent reduction in business investment, going back to about the previous recession. It's only 1 month of data, but there is definitely a reduction in business investment. And we've also seen alongside that household consumption starting to fall as well. And this is reflected in terms of businesses, in terms of the hiring. On the chart here, the green is temporary appointments and the dark blue is permanent. We've seen a reduction in permanent, so businesses are still hiring, but there's a bit more uncertainty. This is filtering through to more temporary appointments. A lot here in terms of business intelligence, in terms of the FSB, the CBI. We actually host here at the MCA a funders forum with bankers and brokers and investors. And what we're seeing is that business confidence has started to fall a bit. We've heard from businesses that actually COVID loans are starting to make an impact now in terms of all this debt they took on is now restricting growth and investment. There's definitely been caution around capital spend in terms of investment in machinery, although we are seeing more investment in terms of digital transformation, energy efficiency, and actually investing in staff and innovation, so that's a positive. But that reduction of consumer spending is starting to filter through to businesses and the cost of doing business as well. So it is a challenging time for businesses. But one positive we did see is that the Bank of England did a survey of the businesses, and they say that Bowen's recent investment in Sheffield, in South Yorkshire, they were really clear that was a big part of that was due to those public and private partnerships. I think in terms of South Yorkshire, we've been doing that better, and we're doing that in terms of work with investors. I know there's lots of good work going on. I think this is just a positive in what we're trying to do in South Yorkshire and how we go forward, so we'll definitely have more of that. In terms of, we have the Quality Economic Survey, in terms of, there is definitely nationally issues with business confidence, but actually in South Yorkshire it's been a little bit bucking the national trend, and businesses are feeling a little bit more confident, and investment intentions, even though they're small, it's still a little better than the national picture. And looking at jobs, we've recently had Metro Dynamics do a review of our evidence base. This is looking at tradable jobs. So this is jobs where in terms of what you produce, in terms of what you produce or your services, of whether it can be traded outside the region. The dark colours are where we've got more of those tradable jobs. The focus is in Sheffield and in Rotherham as well, but there are bits around the region. And looking at the changes of that, we have seen, even though, say, Barnes and Doncaster maybe had fewer than in Sheffield, which you'd probably expect, given historically being Sheffield a core city. Barnsley has seen growth in terms of its tradable jobs, but I would say the point about Sheffield here, Sheffield has also seen growth, but its share of tradable jobs has been higher. And I think what this illustrates to me is the importance of getting our investment zone right. We know we've got our assets, particularly in some of our innovation assets in Sheffield and Rotherham, but it's about getting a supply chain so we get those tradable jobs across the region, and that's been a big focus of our investment zone proposal. And obviously these kind of jobs, this is key to improving your growth and more productivity. But on the positive side, we have seen growth in some of these sectors for tradable jobs in more high-paying sectors such as professional jobs, manufacturing and IT. And that has been across the region. I just wanted to quickly talk about this is some research by the IFS who were looking at jobs changed over the last 30 years or so. Now this one is at middle paid jobs, and what we've seen is a hollowing out of these middle kind of jobs in the North and Midlands, including the South Yorkshire. So the reds are where you've seen big reductions in those, and green is growth. So what we've seen is those kind of middle paid jobs a lot lower now than they were 30 years ago. So the implications for this, people in South Yorkshire, if you've not got a degree, in the past there's more opportunities to work in, say, manufacturing jobs without a degree. Those opportunities are less than they used to be. And looking at this here as well, this is looking at emerging jobs of ones that need a degree. You can see South Yorkshire pointed there in terms of the darker colours are the ones that have a high share of this. As you'd expect, it's London and the Greater South East is doing really well with that. Actually, South Yorkshire, not quite as bad as some rural areas such as Cumbria or Lincolnshire, but we are quite low on that in terms of these emerging jobs that do need a degree. And this is a problem. So what we're seeing is, in terms of people seeking these more better paid jobs with requiring a degree, moving towards London and South East to access those jobs. And the data shows with that, even though that's obviously a problem anyway for the North and Midlands, but it's more likely to be people from wealthier backgrounds who are doing that. And what we're seeing as well in terms of the share of graduates in graduate jobs, and on the right hand side, the dark colours, that's about 30 years ago. It's actually much less now. So in South Yorkshire, it was just under 70% of graduates were in graduate jobs. Now it's about 60%. And what we're seeing is across the whole country, outside of London, this has fallen, whereas in London it's grown. That's when it's London and South East racing away with it. And looking at this is a bit of a messy chart going on here, but the key takeaway is this is looking at graduate wage premium and the share of graduates in the workforce. Now we've seen in the last 30 years, there's a lot more graduates in the workforce, so that's further along to the right. But what it was, in the late 90s, if you were a graduate, and compared to someone without a degree, you were earning a lot more than you do now. The difference is a lot lower. And what we're seeing is all the regions this has fallen, apart from London. So in London, it still pays to be a graduate. And so it's that translation of people having to move to London and South East for some of these jobs. Now, some people might look at this and say, oh, we've got too many graduates. That isn't my takeaway. We need more better quality jobs in our regions in the North, in the Midlands, and especially in South Yorkshire. Now, very quickly, Metro Dynamics also looked at our labour market stats. Now, at headline level, if you compare to other city regions, we're not doing too bad in terms of our major labour market indicators. One thing I would highlight is in terms of our employment rate for ethnic minorities, this is much lower than other regions. And looking into some of this into a bit more detail, this is looking at insecure work. So headline indicators can be a little bit misleading at times. But actually there's only Tees Valley that has a higher rate in terms of its levels of insecure work compared to the national average of combined authorities. And again, drilling down into that detail, looking at that, the thing that jumped out to me was, again, for black and ethnic minorities of insecure work, much higher in South Yorkshire than the national average. So even though maybe at headline level, there's maybe certain groups within that might need more targeted support. Look at this is people with disabilities. I thought this was quite striking. This is looking at people with disabilities, their employment rate and the skill level. So in terms of if you're a non-disabled person with no qualifications, employment rate is about 60%. That's about equal of the total employment rate of people with a disability. And if you're a person who's not disabled, you've got no qualifications, you're just as likely to be employed as a disabled person who's got an A level. So we've got a real issue in terms of our disabled people and the skills level within that as well. But in terms of looking for positives, Gareth trying to do it, not all depressing. In terms of our employment rate in South Yorkshire, people with disabilities, the dashed black line is the national level. Actually, in terms of we've been making progress with that. It's been marginally increasing across the country, but in South Yorkshire, most of our local authorities are much closer to the national average now than they used to be. So we have seen progress in this, but I think there's still more needs to be done. And in terms of our economically inactive cohort, like we know long-term sick has been a problem here. Doncaster looks a lot lower on this, but one caveat I would add is that the ONS has recently put out a statement that a lot of its data, we can't rely on it. That's a big problem when we're trying to make decisions on the data. That's part of the big reason is that people aren't answering surveys as much. So I think I'd be a little bit cautious about that. But at the city region level and at the national level, the data is valid enough. But the main point I would make for this is that for South Yorkshire, in terms of our economic inactive people, over 1 in 3 of that cohort is because of long-term sickness, whereas across the country, it's only about 1 in 4. So it's a much bigger problem for us in this region. And I just wanted to finish as well in terms of looking at personal well-being. And since the pandemic, this has all got worse across a number of indicators. But I thought I'd look at in terms of happiness in terms of South Yorkshire. And South Yorkshire is bucking the trend actually in terms of over the last 2 years across the country it's been falling in terms of this, but in ours have marginally increasing. Doncaster is the green line, so I don't know what's going on in Doncaster, but people have certainly got happier. They mustn't have been asking. I don't think they've been interviewing Doncaster Rovers fans on that.
I
But
got elected around that point, so
yeah. And then just to finish as well, especially to Gareth's point about me thoroughly depressing people with my economic updates, I can neither confirm nor deny that I've been giving economic updates to Hastings over the last couple of years, because that's what's happened with them. And I'll leave it there, Chair.
Okay, thanks, Paul. Does anybody want to say anything about any of that? Send any advice to Hastings? No? Okay. Tom, yeah.
Well, I think thank you for the presentation. That's really helpful. It's a very clear-eyed focus on the strengths of our local regional economy, but also the profound challenges that exist here. And I think looking at those early slides about the percentage of tradable jobs, that for me really jumps out, and it'd be helpful to see the analysis. And it's further, I guess, motivation for all of us to make sure that we're using the opportunities that come through the investment zone to make sure we're bringing in investment to create more of those tradable jobs, because those slides should demonstrate that the region benefits when we're bringing in more of those jobs. So and that will help us with the employment rate for ethnic minorities and tackling those ingrained weaknesses in the economy around the very high long-term sick rate. So I think lots to be of concern. For us to really concentrate our minds, but also in there are some opportunities and the investment zone, and that message that you gave at the very beginning about the positive feedback from Boeing around the public-private close cooperation, I think is something to really hold on to and think what more can we be doing to make sure that public and private and all of us around this table are speaking with one voice about the benefits of coming and investing in South Yorkshire.
Thank you, Tom. I'm curious what's going on in West Wales when you were going through those slides. The west of Wales seems to be doing particularly well, so I'll have a conversation with you afterwards about that. But thank you, Paul. I think you have sufficiently proved Gareth wrong. I've been trying to do that for 18 months and I haven't succeeded yet, so congratulations. Okay, we're on to item number 14, Storm Babet, Flood Impacts and Joint Regional Response. From Colin, before I hand over to Colin, I just want to say, I am conscious there's all too many people across South Yorkshire that are still feeling the effects clearly of Storm Babet and are going to be feeling those effects for a good while yet because of what's happened to them. And I know that our thoughts are with all of them and everybody that was affected by that. I know people are on the ground and doing their very best to help out. in that situation, and it's heartbreaking to see really whenever anybody is affected by the weather. I think we do have to reckon with the reality that is just going to get worse over the next few years, and we need to do something about it. We need to grapple with that reality. So I'm keen to hear from Colin, and then we will have a brief discussion after that. Thank you, Colin.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I was saying, as you say, it was a significant flood across the country, but also importantly in South Yorkshire as well. A month's worth of rainfall fell within 36 hours at some points, and Sheffield was the highest on one of the days in that weekend. The figures are continually being reviewed, so but current indications are that across South Yorkshire there's probably about over 240 properties now that we know have been flooded. Catcliffe and Treaton, as mentioned in the report, was the worst affected, with over 140 properties affected. But there are, as the report sets out, other places such as Longwood and Sheffield, and also in Doncaster as well, where flooding happens as well. And importantly as well, particularly from our perspective as an organisation as well, is that public transport was affected. So rail, buses and the Supertram were actually, services were stopped or were having to redirect. We know the devastating impact the flooding had, and obviously Mayor, as the report says, Mayor Oliver Coppard has recently written to the Secretary of State asking for of DEFRA, asking for further funding to help fund some significant funding gaps, to invite the Secretary of State to visit South Yorkshire again, and also to request a round table to really get behind and get under the skin of some of the issues, and how we can collectively with government and local partners work that forward. And I think there's been some learning with that. There's obviously some issues where we may need to, like at Catcliffe, where it's now flooded twice in 16 years, where a new enhanced solution perhaps needs to be looked at, and we have to work with the Environment Agency and others to see whether what those solutions potentially could be. And also, I think there's, as the report said, there's some learning to be had. I think particularly in terms of that early warning to communities, to enable them to be prepared where we believe that as an event happens in real time, that they've got better notice, I think, and some of that learning will have to feed into how we respond in the future, and reviews will be going on around that. So in terms of the report, it's asking you to note the impacts of Storm Babet, welcome the Mayor's letter to the Secretary of State, and also to note the request for a roundtable meeting.
Thank you, Colin. I note with interest that we now have a new Secretary of State, actually, so
Yes.
Very much hoping that we'll find the letter will find its way onto their desk in the near future. Does anybody have any comments? Yes, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Oliver, and thank you for the representations that you made into government, which I think are really helpful on behalf of all of us. The impact on Catcliffe in particular in my borough was devastating for 100+ families, and all our thoughts are with them at the moment. The council continues to have staff on the ground working hard every day, still in that community, and will be there for the foreseeable future. Two or three points probably. The first one is the report rightly says there is still a significant funding gap in the regional plan that we all signed up to 2 years ago now, something like that. So we need to maintain the pressure on the government for that. I hadn't realised until the last couple of weeks how much flood defence funding nationally had been cut, down something like 60% over the course of the last 13 years, at a time when flood events are much more frequent. And that should worry everybody. I think there is something as well for me about the specifics of Catcliffe, and you've asked the Secretary of State for some additional funding to do some more work around that. Clearly there's the statutory investigation ongoing at the moment into the particular circumstance surrounding that flooding. It shouldn't have happened, and even with the exceptional level of rain, it shouldn't have happened as badly as it did. So I think there are some serious questions that need to be answered about the existing flood defences, the maintenance of those, the upkeep, and ensuring that we are all able to give residents some certainty in the future about that. Those answers clearly can't come quickly enough for that community. So I welcome the the representations that you've made, Oliver, and that we will continue to make into government. And just, I suppose, to reiterate for the record here, that we will continue to drive for those answers to make sure there's real clarity for that community about what will be different in the future.
Thank you, Chris. Ros, I'm conscious this is your portfolio area. Is there anything you would like to add to any of that?
I think we're all very aware that we've not been funded properly in order to create proper flood defences, and different parts of South Yorkshire flooded tremendously over the years. We again was having, as a local authority, to put pumps that we'd acquired. We couldn't depend on what the Environment Agency, and that is their lack of flooding. Also having advance warning, where we've had to bring in our own advance warning systems in order to make sure that residents are protected as much as possible. And to be fair, many of our residents was out there helping to protect themselves as well. And I commend the people of Fishlake for what they did. They'd already got sandbags in and out through their local parish council and continue to do so. And they work hand in glove with the local authority. And it is the only way that we stopped a disaster happening there yet again. So flood defences have got to be high priority, and government need to fund them adequately.
Thank you, Ross. I wonder if it might be, I'm conscious that clearly we'll all be having individual conversations around some of this, but I wonder if it's worth us putting an item on the agenda for maybe 6 months' time, just to revisit, to make sure that we don't lose the thread and provide an update about where the government might have got to with some of those responses. So I think let's put that on the agenda for 6 months and come back to it, because I think that's hugely important. Okay, thank you, Colin. You've already done the recommendation for me, which I appreciate. Thank you very much. Oh, sorry, Tom, I didn't see you.
Thank you very much. And you know, my heart goes out to everyone who's been affected. I really can't think of much worse than having your flood come into your house and destroy your possessions, your property, and turn your life upside down for a long time. I think the letter is welcome to government, and I hope that they will respond appropriately and come and meet and listen to us, but also to residents. I think it's worth highlighting an important point in the letter, which is that flood assistance schemes should operate on a catchment basis rather than a local authority basis. When a river floods, it doesn't care which side of the local authority border you're in, and it's not fair that people who live on one side, just because there's a relatively small number, are not eligible for flood assistance. So I think that would be a welcome change from government, and something that we should be pushing for within the region. The second point I'd make is around flood defences. As I think, as Councillor Reid has said, it's important that we look at what happened, do an audit of that weekend, and see what further investment is needed. But it's also important to consider that flood defences are also about how we slow the flow. Slow the flow of water into our catchment from higher up on moorland ground. We know that there's been some terrific work done up in the Peak District and on the higher ground with leaky dams in order to hold water back up on the higher ground. We know that we need to be planting more trees up on higher ground. We know, frankly, that we need to see a stop to moorland burning, which encourages quick runoff from the moors into our river catchment system, so that water is coming down into places like Hatcliffe faster than it would be if we had a properly populated moorland upland with trees in the way that it would naturally have been. So these are all things that must be in the mix when we're having further conversations about flooding in our region, and I would welcome that chance to have the roundtable conversation with ministers.
Brill, well said. Thank you very much. Okay. Has anybody else not missed anyone? No. On to item number 15, please, which is devolution from Andy Gates. This is an update on where we are in terms of those next phase of devolution settlements. The government are set to make an announcement at the autumn statement in the coming days about that, so worth just getting an update from Andy. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. And as excuse me, as Oliver has said, we expect, or we certainly believe the government intend to make an announcement at the autumn statement, 22nd of this month, to offer up to MCAs the opportunity to deepen, strengthen their devolution deal offer. That will be, as we expect, to be centred around elements of the Trailblazer deals that government did with Greater Manchester and the West Midlands earlier this year. which were significant, but also subclause limited in their scope and scale. So what this paper really does is a number of things. One is just seeks to sort of secure support for the MCA to engage with the appropriate government department should there be an announcement around widening, further, deepening devolution, and that we take a proactive approach to that we adopt some guiding principles underpinning that work, principally those being that anything we seek supports us in the delivery of the priorities and objectives that the MCA wants to see happen, that they build and strengthen things that we are already doing and that we are already good at, that we will work through the portfolio and cabinet model of governance that we've established. And then the third and final thing really is that we recognise, the MCA board has to recognise that the devolution deal powers that may become available are still fairly limited in scope and scale. So seeking some support from the board to start to develop more ambitious proposals that sit outside of the adopting any of the things that are in the trailblazer deals. And my final point on all this would be that public engagement work on this will become clear whether we have to do any sort of public engagement statutory consultation process. But just worth remembering that both in the 2015 and 2018 devolution deal process, we consulted pretty widely with people from across the Sheffield City region the first time and South Yorkshire the second time, and they were all very much in support of the principle that local leaders have more control over the things that make a difference to them. That's the paper.
Brill, thank you. Probably worth saying, this morning I have had a call with Michael Gove as part of the M10, and without breaking any confidences, I think it's fair to say I remain keen to see it go as fast as possible in terms of devolution, particularly around things like business rate retention, single pot settlement, which I think the government are at this point, it seems to me, committing to elsewhere, notably Greater Manchester and West Midlands. And I think the fear I have is that there becomes a divergence in terms of what is available to various different combined authorities, and I think that's what we have to guard against, a two-tier system, or indeed more than two-tier system. And so we'll be looking to see what the government do announce next week, and then we'll try to engage actually before then, but as we have been. But so right up until any announcements, but following those announcements, and given that we think we know what's in there, we'll carry on that lobbying going forward to get more power, more control, more investment in South Yorkshire, so we can take control of our own future in as many areas as seems relevant or important. Thank you very much. Does anybody have any comments or questions for Andy, or anything they'd like to say about the item? No? We're good. Okay, in which case the recommendation is that the board note the potential for further devolution in the government's intention to extend the trailblazer powers to other MCAs, albeit not trailblazer deals, support proactive engagement with government in the coming months, and note that any decision to complete a formal devolution process will require the consent of each constituent local authority. All agreed? Yes, thank you very much. Okay, on to item number 16, please, which is the submission of the tram outline business case, OBC to DFT, and that is from Pat, please. I'll let you introduce the item. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This paper asks the board to approve the following: delegate authority to the MCA's acting exec director of transport and a section 73 officer to submit an outline business case for the tram asset renewal to the Department for Transport. It also seeks authority to engage further with local authority transport officers in the detailed review of the draft mass transit asset renewal business case before the finalisation of that ahead of submission to the DFT expected in early 2024. The outline tram business case serves two purposes. Number one, it seeks to release already earmarked funding from CRSCS, £100 million earmarked for this MCA to spend on the renewal of the tram asset, which was first built in 1995. So it allows the Department for Transport to authorise the release of that retained funding from CRSCS to the MCA, so we can start the works on the asset renewal for the system. The second element of the purpose of the outline business case is to signpost that there's further asset renewal needs for the tram system beyond the initial allocation of £100 million CRSCS funding. So we're seeking approval to progress with the work that we're doing on this, and seeking approval to delegate that authority to myself and to our Section 73 officer, Garrett, to submit this to the Department for Transport in early 2024. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments or questions? Tram? Yeah, thank you. Tom, not Tram, sorry.
I do talk about trams quite a lot. No, thank you very much for the report and for the work that's gone in to prepare the outline business case. We welcome this, and our team in Sheffield is, as you know, is working with you to support you on this, and happy to help in any way we can. The tram is an asset for our region, and it is right that 30 years after it first opened in 1994, that we are now doing this significant, preparing the way for this significant renewal work. I think it's also worth noting, and I welcome this in the report, that it is now the case that we are doing a separate tram vision exercise to look at the opportunities for expanding our tram network, to make sure that we as a region are maximising the opportunities that are there to give our region the mass transit, low carbon transport system that so many people need and could benefit more from if the network is expanded. So it's welcome that that is ongoing, and I'm sure in due course the board will hear more about that, but this has got our full support. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? No? Okay, in which case the MCA board, the recommendation is that the board approve the following: delegate authority to the MCA's acting executive director of transport and the section 73 officer, the exec director resource and investment, in consultation with the MCA chief executive and the mayor of South Yorkshire, to submit the completed tram asset renewal, mass transit OBC, to the DFT upon conclusion of the final review stages, which are estimated to be in January 2024. And number 2, to engage with local authority transport officers in the detailed review of the mass transit OBC to support the finalisation of the documentation ahead of the submission to the DFT by January 2024. Target date. Are we all agreed? Yes, thank you very much. Okay, in which case we move on to item number 17, please, which is a statement of common ground from Colin.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, statements of common grounds are a part of the local authority's duty to cooperate requirements, essentially to set out cross-boundary planning issues where neighbouring authorities can agree on. This is the version is an updated version from a version in 2020, original one in 2020, and it's based again on the Sheffield City region, the former Sheffield City region area. The reason being that obviously, as we know, things like housing markets, travel to work areas, transport schemes, and also natural environmental issues, they don't really stop at an administrative boundary. The statement brings together existing policy, so it's not new policy, and also refers to published evidence, so that this is ready available, particularly for local planning inquiries and examinations. And so it will help authorities, particularly at those examinations. And Sheffield City Council, for example, have their local plan inquiry in the new year. So this will be part of that evidence that forms there. The 4 South Yorkshire local authorities have formally approved, gone through their governance arrangements and signed this updated statement. And other authorities are either formally signed or are currently completing their governance processes. So as with the previous statement, the MCA has been invited to also endorse and agree to be a signatory to the statement in support of the local planning authorities.
Thank you very much, Colin. Ros, I think this probably comes under your remit. Do you have anything you wanted to add? Okay.
No, I think this is really a continuation of what we've all signed up for before, and certainly is the necessary thing to ensure that we take into account cross-boundary planning applications.
Thanks, Ros. Anyone else? No? Okay, brilliant. In which case the board is asked to endorse the updated regional statement of common ground and agree to be signatories. Happy? Delighted. Me too. Thank you, Colin. Item number 18 is Brownfield Housing Fund open call. Again from Colin. Busy man? Oh, sorry.
Chair, I'm going to introduce this, so I'll give Colin a rest. But if you've got any difficult questions, I'll certainly pass them over to Colin. So thank you, Chair. So this report provides update on progress with our Brownfield Housing Fund programme and seeks approval both to a rolling open call process and to add 5 schemes from a reserve list on the existing active pipeline of schemes. Both of these recommendations will help ensure that we are able to meet both our spend and new homes targets by the end of March 2025 deadline, which is now only 16 months away. Creating new high quality homes that are affordable to both rent and for sale is critical to meet the growing housing need in our communities, and also to support the regeneration of our towns and cities across South Yorkshire. The programme is delivering well so far. 18 brownfield housing schemes have been approved or approved in principle, with a total funding ask of 34 million, which will deliver 2,800 new homes. Appendix A sets out the current list of approved schemes. This leaves 17 million of the 51.4 funding still available for new brownfield housing schemes. Some schemes that were on the pipeline and being developed have recently been withdrawn, and there remains risk with some schemes, which could mean that the programme under-delivers, and we don't want to meet the end of March 2025 deadline. The last thing we want to see happen is for the programme to under-deliver and not meet its spending and home targets, and then we have to give money back to government rather than spending it on providing much needed new homes for the region. Appendix 2 sets out the active pipeline list of brownfield housing schemes for the remaining funding, including the additional schemes proposed to be added today. Along with new schemes, the open call proposal will also enable us to keep a dialogue going with local authorities, housing association and developers, and enable us to more rapidly bring other potential deliverable schemes onto the pipeline for funding approval and delivery, should some of our existing schemes in the pipeline fall out of the programme. Delivery is the key to the programme being successful, and we are helping over 3,300 new homes to be built in South Yorkshire that would otherwise not have gone ahead. We do, though, rely on the scheme sponsors, which include local authorities, housing associations and private developers, to ensure that the new homes are built to the agreed timescales, which, as I've stated before, is very tight. The SYMCA executive is closely monitoring the delivery of all schemes in the programme, and I have asked for regular updates to ensure that progress is maintained in delivery. The recommendations are set out, which are 1, to agree a rolling open call process, and to allow 5 additional pipeline projects onto the programme pipeline. And I intend to continue to report back delivery progress to this board from time to time over the remaining period in the programme. Thank you. And Colin and I, if they're difficult, it will be Colin, will answer any questions that you have.
Does anybody have any softball questions for Ros that they would like to ask? Anyone? Comments or questions? No. All I would say is I think my sense is this is a piece of work that's going really well, and I was pleased to see the list of projects that have been agreed and where we're kind of able to engage and support. So I think this is a good piece of work, and we should carry on. Going down this road, absolutely. Ros's point is absolutely right. We do not want to be giving money back to government, so keen for any developers listening into this meeting in their droves that they should engage with us on that piece of work, because there is money available to help with schemes that otherwise might not get off the ground. Indeed, local authority partners who might want to help and engage in that, we'd be grateful for that conversation. So thanks to everybody that's been involved in that piece of work so far, because it has been, I think, a significant success. Anything before we move on?
Just echo that. I think this is really positive, and grateful for the support that's being recommended for schemes in Sheffield. As Colin mentioned earlier on, Sheffield's local plan is currently being examined, and this sets out a development framework through which we will seek to build 36,000 new homes in Sheffield over the next 15 years, 20,000 of them in and around the central core of the city. And we are very, very focused on making sure that we have sufficient housing growth in our city, and these kind of schemes are exactly what we need. So grateful for the support that's available, and would welcome more support from central government as always.
Thank you. Okay, unless there's any other comments, the recommendations are that the board is asked to agree to a rolling open call process to ensure the development of a robust pipeline of brownfield sites for both the current programme and any future housing funded programme. And point 2, allow additional pipeline projects onto the current programme following the MCA assurance process, with initial schemes being Cannon Brewery Phase 2, the Hive, Laurel Works, Rotherham Priority Sites, Newstead Older Persons Independent Living. Agreed? Fantastic. Thank you very much. Thanks, Colin. On to item number 19, please, which is finance update Q2 from Gareth.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a mid-year update that's doing 3 things. It provides an update on the financial performance of the authority after the first 6 months of the year, and it notes the exceptional performance on Treasury Management. That's detailed in the appendix in the mid-year Treasury Management update. The report's also seeking the award of funding to the Sheffield Fargate scheme, and that's a regeneration scheme that with MCA funding complementing Fargate Future High Street funding. The report also seeks the approval for the disposal of land and buildings at Halfway in Sheffield, and at that point I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions or comments for Gareth? No? There you go. Okay, in which case the recommendation is that the board approves the revised budget estimates, approve the set aside of windfall Treasury Management income to meet the costs of May 24 election and Office for Police and Crime Commissioner integration, approve and set aside of £4 million of forecast windfall Treasury Management income to the capacity and capability reserve, note the potential for up to £4 million further Treasury Management income available for investment into MCA priorities, approve the programme approvals report recommendations set out in Appendix 3 and delegate authority to the statutory officers to make arrangements for the disposal by sale or lease of the Ashes building site in the most efficient and effective manner humanly possible. Any comments? No? Agreed? Great. Thank you very much. Thanks, Gareth. Item number 20 is statutory accounts 21-22, which is again from Gareth.
Thank you. This report provides over 300 pages of financial statements to the board and represents the accounts for the MCA and for the South Yorkshire Passenger Transport Executive for financial year 21-22. I'm really pleased to report that the auditor's finance report is also appended to this and offers an unqualified opinion on both the MCA and SIPT's statement of accounts and finds no matters to report on value for money. So I recommend the approval of these accounts to the board.
Brill. Any comments or questions about the accounts? Hard questions? No? Okay, thank you everyone. In which case the recommendation is that the board approve the annual statement of accounts for both the MCA and SYPTE. Agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much. On to item number 21, which is the delegated authority report from Martin, please.
Thank you, Oliver. This is the regular report to board, which runs from July 20 to date and keeps all board members advised of the delegated authority progress on individual schemes and projects. Thank you.
Thank you. The recommendation is that the board notes the decisions and delegations made. Is everyone happy? Brilliant. Okay, thank you. In which case that comes to the close of the meeting. Has anybody got any other business they would like to add in before we close? No? All right, brilliant. Okay, in which case thank you everybody, and thanks for everybody watching online.